Greetings, fellow makers! This is the Real Malky. Welcome back to my factory. I know it's been kind of quiet on this channel lately, but there is a very good reason for that. I'm going to Dragon Con in just a few months, and I thought it would be fun to make a dragon cosplay. Specifically, this one, the Epyon Gundam, which actually transforms into a dragon. My cosplay will not transform into a dragon. I am not that flexible anymore. But it's a little bit different from the things I usually make. So I thought I'd make some prototypes, and I will show you those in just a minute. I made prototypes of the boot covers. These will just slide on over my boot, and we'll have some elastic here to here, something like that. We'll figure that out eventually. I made some shin guard prototypes, like these. Oh, not like these actual things. I made some prototype thigh guards, because the thigh pieces on Epyon are a little bit complicated, as you can see by all these panel lines and whatnot. I made the shoulder cover pad thingies, because, again, pretty boxy, pretty weird shape. So I figured I'd practice. Also made a prototype of the torso, because, again, pretty weird shape, but I think I got it figured out. I made the back piece, which comes apart from the abs, to make it easier to pack and move and whatnot. And last but definitely not least, I made the prototype helmet. And yes, this thing actually does fit over my head. I can hear pretty well, and visibility isn't that bad either. I can still see my hand, and now it's gone. Same thing to the left. Can't see my left hand anymore. But the important thing is it fits. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, Ryan, none of those pieces are done. They curl kind of weird. They're not sealed. The seams look really bad. That's because they're just prototypes. I wanted to see how well the pattern pieces I made would fit together. And as you can see, they work pretty well. So now it's time to build the real one. I decided to start with the hip armor. That means all this stuff. Seemed like a good idea at the time. So, here we go. Now, before we get started, we're going to need some stuff, obviously. We will need our pattern pieces. Yes, this one. I put all my pattern pieces into an envelope. That way they don't get lost. I know exactly where they are. I promise I will make a pattern making tutorial, but not today. I'm too excited about Epyon. So, you will also need a marker of some sort. Sharpies are great. You will need foam to trace your pattern pieces onto. I'm using 4, 6, and 8mm foam to add some dimensionality and depth and details and whatnot. You will need a knife with which to cut out your pieces. An Exacto knife will work for your 4 and 6mm foam, but for the 8, 10, and pretty much anything else, you'll need a box cutter or a bandsaw, which I'm going to be using my bandsaw. Those are great for your 90-degree cuts, the ones that are straight up and down, like this. But when you're doing a bevel cut like this, it's kind of difficult for me to keep that consistent angle. So I'll be using my bevel cutter from Foamworks. I'll put a link to the description, in the description. You'll also need a heat gun for sealing the foam and doing any shaping or whatnot. You'll need a rotary tool of some sort. And because when you're using a rotary tool, all that foam dust is going to fly all over the place. So you want to keep it out of your nose, mouth, and eyes. A dust mask will protect your nose and mouth. Safety glasses are great for protecting your eyes. Also, I noticed these don't fog up as much, which is a good thing because you kind of need to see what you're doing. And we will be using contact cement to glue these pieces together. And because contact cement is super toxic, we'll be wearing a respirator. Also, the hip armor requires cutting out a circle. So I'll be using my House Tools circle cutter. I've tried to cut circles out by hand and it just doesn't work. So, use one of these. I will put a link to the description for all this stuff. And yeah, let's get started. Now, normally I would cut these pieces out and then use a heat gun to seal the foam. But some of these pieces are rather small, and this is the 4mm foam, which means the hot air from the heat gun might blow them away and then they'd be lost forever. So instead of doing things the normal way, I'm going to take a tip from Tiffany Gordon Cosplay and heat seal the pieces before I cut them out. It seems to be working okay for her. So, here we go! The reason we heat seal foam is because it has a whole bunch of little pores on its surface. Heat sealing will close those pores and shrink the surface of the foam just a little bit. Now, I am going to chemically seal this as well, but I want this to look really good. So we're going to do every little step that I know to make this my best build ever. Okay. I know it's kind of difficult to see on camera because the foam is white and the slight change doesn't really show up well. But these pieces are sealed now. Actually, I can show you on this piece. Okay, see how this piece is kind of shiny and these pieces are kind of dull. That's because this piece has been heat sealed. So those pores are now much smaller. And now I'm going to do that to the rest of the foam pieces. Like this one, and this one, and this one. But you don't need to see that, so we'll skip ahead to when that's done. The foam is all heat sealed and ready to cut out. Now, you'll notice arrows all over the place and hash marks and letters and whatnot. That is to help me remember which edge goes to which other edge. Now, these edges here, and here are just regular old straight up and down 90-degree cuts. I'm going to be using an Exacto knife for these. Make sure your blade is extremely sharp. Like that. That's the edge we're looking for right there. And yeah, these arrows all over this thing mean these edges will need a bevel cut. So I'll be using this. The arrows also tell me which way the blade is supposed to go into the foam. Arrows pointing away from the edge mean the blade is supposed to go under the piece, like that. And arrows pointing towards the edge, which I don't have any on this one. Here we go. This arrow is pointing towards the edge, which means the blade needs to go in like that. But we're not there yet, so I will come back. Well, actually, now I'm just going to make all the 90-degree cuts. You will also notice, when my hand is not in the way, that I am cutting on the outside of the Sharpie line. That is because these edges, the ones that don't have any letters or hash marks or arrows by them, don't actually have to be glued to anything else. And I know I'm going to use a rotary tool to round over these edges. So this way gives me a little bit more wiggle room. Just follow your line. And keep your blade at 90 degrees. And you'll cut all the way through your piece just like this. And now I'm going to make all these other cuts, and then I'll come back when it's time to use this thing. Time to use the bevel cutter. Just follow your line, just like that. And I'm going to do the same thing to all the other pieces. For cutting out the circle piece, this guy right here, I'm going to measure. It's about 3 inches. So I'm going to set my circle cutter to cut a diameter of 3 inches. Now, when you're using this tool, you want to make sure that you have good contact with at least okay, this is not good contact. I want to have as much of this protective thing on the foam as we can get. So, here we go. Just keep turning it until you cut all the way through the foam. But at the same time, be careful, because once you've cut all the way through the foam, at least on mine, the blade tends to get out of alignment. So, go slow and pay attention. Good policy whenever you're cutting something. And now, we bring the blade back up to the top to make sure it doesn't cut through anything else before we want it to. And then you can use your Exacto knife to cut through any remaining foam. It shouldn't be that much. And now we have a circle that will go right there. And then the rest of it is just cutting out foam pieces. Alright, so the edge on the circle piece wasn't always so clean. It was kind of jagged and torn and messed up. So I went over this with my rotary tool to give it this nice clean edge. Same thing with this edge and this edge. And now it's time to glue our pieces together. So I will set that up and come back when we're ready to do that. Also, while you are making your project, whether it's a Dragon Gundam, a suit of medieval armor, whatever, make sure to keep looking at your reference images to make sure that there are any details you're missing, like this slight bevel on this circle here and here and here. Because trust me, it's a lot easier to add those details before you glue stuff together. You might be able to do it after, but you'll save yourself a lot of trouble by doing it before. And now it's time to glue stuff together. Okay, now that the pieces are mostly cut out, it's time to glue them together. For that, you'll be using barge contact cement. And because this stuff is super toxic, you'll be wearing a respirator. If you have any cuts or scratches on your hands, make sure to wear gloves or at least band-aids or something like that, because if you don't want to breathe this stuff, you definitely don't want it in your bloodstream. Also, if you have any pets or anything like that, this would be the time to kick them out, because if it's bad for you, it's bad for them too. Alright, now that the public safety announcement is out of the way, let's get to the fun stuff. Now, the way contact cement works is you apply it to both surfaces you want to attach, wait for it to dry, and then attach it. Like this. Sometimes I do 2 coats on places that will get a lot of movement and wear and tear and stuff, but since this is just going on over my hips and it's not going to move very much, I'm not that worried about it. Just make sure to cover the entire surface, because any places you miss will not attach. And now I'm going to do the same thing. Apply my glue. Oh, I did mark the outline of this piece so that I know exactly where to attach to put down my glue. So that way I don't have to cover the entire piece, because there will be a lot of contact cement. Okay. And we're going to skip ahead to when this is done. Okay, our contact cement has been applied to both surfaces. And now it is time to let them dry. I've heard you can speed up this process with a hairdryer, but you also run the risk of just drying the top layer of contact cement while leaving the under layers still wet. And because no more air can get through, those layers will take forever to dry. So I find it's easiest to just let it dry naturally on its own in about 10 to 15 minutes. So I will be back when that's dry. All right. It has been 15 minutes and it is time to glue pieces together. So here we go. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Malky, those pieces don't line up. 2B is way too big, way too wide. I did that on purpose. I'm going to cut these pieces out using my bandsaw because I'm spoiled and I have one. But you don't actually need a bandsaw for cosplay. It is just a very useful tool. And I forgot to attach the piece here, so I will lay down some more contact cement and be back when it's time to cut all these out on the bandsaw. So this right here is my bandsaw. I call it Slicey McDicey. You're about to see why. But before we do that, we need to take adequate safety precautions because obviously this blade moves really fast, and as you can see, there's a fair amount of foam dust that flies all over the place. So we'll put on a dust mask. There we go. And safety glasses thing. And now that the public safety announcement is out of the way, we can get to the fun stuff. Whenever you're using a bandsaw or any kind of power tools, make sure to keep your hands away from the blade, because this blade moves really fast. And if your hand is close or touching it, you can seriously injure yourself. So don't do that. All the time, keeping your fingers away from the blade. Now, I could have done this without the bandsaw, but I probably wouldn't get this nice edge right here or here. So I'm going to keep using my bandsaw. Okay, pieces are cut out and it's time for another round of gluing, which means hard cement and respirator. Just to be sure. I'm outlining where the other parts need to be glued down. So again, I know exactly where to put my glue. Again, make sure you cover the entire surface. that you wish to connect. And try to keep it only where you want glue. Try not to have any drips or accidental brushes or anything like that. Okay, now we're going to wait for that to dry. Alright, so our hip armor is basically done at this point. I made these last night, as well as these. These will go on the back. This guy just needs to be glued down like so. And then they all need to temporarily attach to the abdomen so that I can remove them and put them in a suitcase so I can travel with them. Also, I think it would be nice to sit down when I'm wearing this thing. But that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Also, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much, and have a great day.